Hello everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a powerful story from the book of Joshua, one that holds a deep message for our spiritual lives right now. It's the story of conquering the land, a challenge that reveals so much about God's promises and our part in them. In Joshua chapter 13, God tells Joshua something fascinating. He says, "You are old and advanced in years, and there remains yet very much land to be possessed." Think about that. God had already given them the land as a gift, but they still had to go in and possess it, step by step. This is a huge principle for us. Possession is both a divine gift and a human process. This tension between what God gives and what we must do reflects our own spiritual journey. First, let's be clear. The land was a gift of grace, not something Israel earned. Ephesians 2 tells us that salvation is a gift, and it's the same idea here. God didn't give Israel the land because they were so righteous. He gave it because of His covenant faithfulness, His justice against the wickedness of other nations, and His plan to reveal His character to the world. Prophetically, this means God's church today doesn't inherit the kingdom because of its own strength or status. It's purely by grace that God calls, saves, and empowers His faithful people. But grace doesn't mean we just sit back and do nothing. This is where human cooperation comes in. Philippians chapter 2 says, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." This doesn't contradict grace. It shows us how grace works in our lives. God gives the land, but Israel had to conquer it. God gives us salvation, and we must cooperate by overcoming sin. God gives the kingdom, and we must stand faithful to receive it. Grace enables our faith. Our faith leads to obedience, and our obedience, powered by God, brings the victory. Now, look at the division of the land in Joshua chapters 13 through 21. This isn't just a historical record, it's deeply prophetic. God assigned each tribe its specific inheritance. It wasn't a free-for-all. This inheritance was tied to each tribe's identity and divine calling. Some tribes, like Judah and Ephraim, stepped out in faith and strength. Others hesitated and compromised, delaying their blessing. This is a picture of the end-time division between those who faithfully inherit the kingdom and those who do on entering the earthly land of Canaan. Was a symbol of entering the heavenly Canaan. But before they could enter, they had to prove faithful in the earthly tests. Ellen White emphasizes that conquering the land required active faith, not presumption. The tribes who trusted God's leading received their reward, while those who held back missed out. For us, this means victory over sin is not just about human effort, but about complete surrender to Christ. The conquest of Canaan is the pattern for how God's end-time people will be sealed and stand firm. So, what is the challenge of the land for us in these final events? The Bible's prophetic timeline reveals a deeper fulfillment, just as the faithless generation couldn't enter Canaan. The Bible teaches that God's church must be purified before it can inherit the eternal kingdom. This purification prepares a people to stand, and just as Joshua divided the land among the tribes, prophecy indicates that God Himself will allot the inheritance to His purified people. This is the ultimate restoration of God's kingdom on earth, even before the close of probation. The modern giants we face in our land today are things like worldliness, fear, unbelief, and spiritual lukewarmness. God's remnant people must conquer these giants through faith, not by their own strength. So, what's the takeaway for us today? First, there is still much land to be possessed. This applies to refining our character, gaining victory over sin, and finishing the work of sharing the gospel. Second, remember that grace doesn't eliminate the spiritual battle. It empowers us for the battle. God does the impossible, but we must respond with obedience, faith, and perseverance. And finally, our battle today determines our inheritance tomorrow. The prophetic division of the land is near. This points to the purification of the church, the sealing of God's faithful, and the restoration of His kingdom. Let's choose to be among those who, by God's grace, conquer the land and receive our eternal inheritance. Thanks for watching. If this study blessed you, please like and subscribe for more content. See you next time.